History is filled with great commanders: Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon. But there is another, Khalid ibn al-Waleed, a 7th century Arabian general, undefeated in battle, known as the Drawn Sword of God. His story is one of transformation, courage, and leadership. Join me as we explore the legend forged in the sands of time. To understand Khalid, we must first understand his world. Imagine Arabia in the late 6th and early 7th centuries. It was not a unified country as we know it today. It was a land of powerful tribes, each with its own loyalties, traditions, and gods. Life was harsh, shaped by the unforgiving desert. Survival depended on the strength of one's tribe. The cities, like Mecca, were bustling centers of trade, connecting vast empires. Caravans carrying spices, silks, and incense traveled ancient routes, making Mecca a hub of culture and wealth. But it was also a place of deep-seated tribal rivalries and constant conflict. In this world, honor was everything. A man's worth was measured by his courage in battle, his generosity, and his loyalty to his clan. Poetry celebrated the deeds of brave warriors, and stories of epic clashes were told around campfires under the starry desert sky. It was a polytheistic society. People worshipped many idols and gods, with the Kaaba in Mecca being a central shrine housing hundreds of them. This was the environment that shaped Khalid. He was born into the Banu Makhzum, one of the most powerful and respected clans of the Quraysh tribe, the rulers of Mecca. They were known for their wealth, their influence, and their military prowess. This era was the edge of a great transformation. To the north and west lay two colossal powers, the Byzantine Empire, the heir to Rome, and the Sasanian Persian Empire. These two giants had been locked in a state of almost constant warfare for centuries, weakening each other in the process. They viewed the Arabian tribes as a collection of disorganized desert dwellers, useful as buffer states or mercenaries but not as a serious threat. They could not have imagined that a force would soon emerge from this very desert that would challenge their centuries-old dominance and change the map of the world forever. This was the world on the brink. It was into this dynamic, volatile, and tradition-bound world that a new message began to spread. A man named Muhammad, also from the Quraysh tribe, started to preach the oneness of God, a message called Islam. This new faith challenged the very foundations of Meccan society. It threatened the polytheistic beliefs, the tribal hierarchies, and the economic power linked to the pilgrimage to the idols in the Kaaba. The established leaders of Mecca, including Khalid's clan, saw this as a direct threat to their way of life. The stage was set for a monumental clash of ideas and armies, and Khalid ibn al-Waleed was destined to be at its very center. Before he was the sword of God, Khalid was the sword of the Quraysh, a fierce defender of his tribe's traditions and honor, mastering horsemanship and military strategy. His loyalty was to his tribe, the Quraysh. But history has a way of taking unexpected turns. Khalid's journey from enemy to believer is profound. The sword of God was not just a name, it was his purpose. In the heart of Mecca, Khalid ibn al-Waleed was born into the powerful Banu Makhzum clan, Mecca's military and aristocratic elite. Surrounded by wealth, strategy, and martial pride, Khalid's childhood was shaped by stories of bravery and leadership. His father, Waleed ibn al-Mughira, was a legendary leader, casting a long shadow of expectation. Raised among warriors and leaders, Khalid was destined to uphold his clan's legacy of strength and honor. From a young age, Khalid's training was intense. In ancient Arabia, martial skill was a necessity, not a hobby. He learned to ride almost before he could walk, mastering horsemanship and every weapon of his time. Khalid trained relentlessly, earning a reputation for unmatched strength, speed, and skill. He studied strategy, listened to veteran warriors, and learned to see the battlefield as a chessboard. By manhood, Khalid was a formidable, confident leader, truly the making of a warrior. Khalid ibn al-Waleed was born into Meccan nobility, enjoying privilege and influence as the son of a wealthy leader. He moved easily among the city's elite, balancing the life of a warrior with that of an aristocrat. Khalid's charisma and leadership made him a central figure in Mecca's social circles where poetry, sports, and feasts shaped the culture. Fiercely proud of his lineage, he embodied the pre-Islamic code of Muruwa, bravery, loyalty, and honor. The traditions of the Quraysh and the worship at the Kaaba were the pillars of his world. Khalid saw himself as a guardian of the old ways, confident in the system that had made Mecca powerful. Unbeknownst to him, a challenge to everything he valued was about to rise from within his own city. Into this world, Muhammad ibn Abdullah began preaching a radical message: the worship of one God, Allah. Islam threatened Mecca's traditions, tribal hierarchies, and economy, unsettling the city's leaders, including Khalid. The new faith called for equality and rejected the authority of the tribal elders. Khalid, loyal to his heritage, became a fierce opponent, using his influence and skill to resist the spread of Islam. The city was divided: on one side, the powerful Quraysh; on the other, a small but determined group of believers. Tensions escalated from persecution to open conflict. Khalid was ready to defend his world, unaware that destiny would soon turn him from enemy to champion of the very cause he fought. The stage was set for a transformation that would change history. Khalid's opposition to Islam was unwavering, until he witnessed the Muslims' resilience and unity in battle. Their faith was unlike anything he'd seen, and the Prophet's leadership inspired loyalty through compassion, not fear. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah revealed the Prophet's wisdom and desire for peace, leaving a deep impression on Khalid. Islam continued to grow, and Khalid began to question if he was on the wrong side of history. His brother's conversion and a personal letter from the Prophet made Khalid feel seen and valued. The old certainties of his world crumbled as doubt took root. The gods of the Kaaba seemed powerless before this new spiritual force. Khalid's resistance weakened, replaced by a powerful urge for change. The seeds of doubt had become a call he could no longer ignore. Khalid decided to leave Mecca and embrace Islam, knowing it meant abandoning his past and risking everything. He confided in Amr ibn al-As, who shared his doubts, and together they set out for Medina, joined by Uthman ibn Talha. Their journey was dangerous, as discovery by the Quraysh could mean death. Each step toward Medina was a step away from the world Khalid once defended. The three men traveled discreetly, united by conviction and hope. Arriving at Medina, Khalid faced uncertainty. Would he be accepted or condemned for his past? He stood at the threshold of a new identity, ready to offer his loyalty to the Prophet he once opposed. The warrior of Mecca was about to become a champion of Islam. Khalid and his companions entered Medina and were brought before the Prophet Muhammad. Khalid greeted the Prophet, declared his faith, and asked for forgiveness for his past opposition. The Prophet welcomed him with grace, assuring him that Islam erases all previous sins. Khalid pledged his loyalty, swearing to serve God and his messenger with all his strength. This was more than a political alliance, it was a profound spiritual commitment. The Muslim community rejoiced, recognizing the significance of Khalid's conversion. The man who was once their fiercest enemy was now a brother in faith. Khalid's integration was swift, his skills and reputation were embraced. He was ready to prove his loyalty, and a new chapter of his life began. Soon his military genius would earn him a legendary title in the annals of history. At the Battle of Mu'tah, the Muslim army faced overwhelming odds. When all commanders fell, Khalid ibn al-Waleed stepped up, rallying the troops and masterminding a brilliant retreat that saved them from destruction. For this, the Prophet named him Saif Allah al-Mazlul, the drawn sword of God, a symbol of unmatched loyalty and genius. After years of conflict, the balance of power in Arabia shifted. The Prophet Muhammad marched on Mecca with a vast army, aiming for a bloodless victory. Khalid led one of 4 columns, entering his hometown not as a defender of idols, but as a commander of faith. Most entered peacefully, fulfilling the Prophet's vision of mercy. Only Khalid's column met resistance, but he acted swiftly and cleared the way. The idols were destroyed, and Mecca was reclaimed for a universal faith. After Mecca's peaceful conquest, not all of Arabia submitted. The Hawazin and Thaqif tribes gathered a massive army to challenge the Prophet. In the valley of Hunain, the Muslims were ambushed and chaos erupted. The Prophet stood firm, rallying his men. Khalid ibn al-Waleed and steadfast companions regrouped the army. Order was restored and the Muslims secured a decisive victory. With Arabia unified under Islam, the Prophet Muhammad turned north to the Byzantine Empire. In 630, he assembled a massive force for the Tabuk expedition. The journey was arduous, testing faith and endurance. Though the Byzantines avoided battle, the campaign was a strategic success. Khalid captured a key oasis, enhancing his reputation. These campaigns set the stage for future conflicts. In 632, the Prophet Muhammad passed away, creating a leadership crisis. Abu Bakr became the first caliph, facing rebellions across Arabia. The Ridda Wars threatened to splinter the region. Abu Bakr took a firm stand, uniting tribes under Islam. Khalid ibn al-Walid was chosen to face Musaylima the liar. The Battle of Yamama was brutal, but Khalid's leadership turned the tide. With Musaylima's defeat, Arabia's unity was secured. Caliph Abu Bakr turned his gaze northward to the Sasanian Persian Empire. The Persians dominated modern-day Iraq, known as Asoristan. Abu Bakr launched a campaign to secure the frontier. In 633, Khalid ibn al-Walid led an army into Persian territory. A small, desert-hardened army faced a global superpower. The battle was known as the Battle of Chains. Khalid killed the Persian general, Hormuz. This boosted Muslim morale and demoralized the Persians. The Persian line collapsed into chaos. The Battle of Chains was a stunning victory for Khalid. After the victory at the Battle of Chains, Khalid continued his relentless advance into Persian territory, winning a series of smaller battles. The Persian emperor, realizing the gravity of the threat, assembled a new, even larger army to stop him. This new force was composed of the best Sasanian troops and reinforced by Christian Arab allies who were loyal to the empire. They were determined to crush the Muslim invasion once and for all. The two armies met at a place called Walaja. The Persian commander chose a battlefield where he had the terrain to his advantage, confident that his superior numbers and heavy infantry would prevail. Khalid ibn al-Walid, however, was about to execute a tactical masterpiece. A maneuver so brilliant and daring that it is still studied in military academies today. He analyzed the battlefield and his enemy's mindset. He knew the Persians would expect a frontal assault, similar to what they had faced before, so he decided to do something completely unexpected. Before the battle, under the cover of night, he dispatched 2 strong regiments of his elite cavalry on a long, concealed march around the enemy's flanks. He instructed them to hide behind 2 ridges to the rear of the Persian army and to wait for his signal. The next day, the battle began as the Persians expected. Khalid engaged their main army with his infantry, holding them in a fierce frontal engagement. The fighting was intense, and the Persians, with their greater numbers, began to push the Muslim center back. This was part of Khalid's plan. He allowed his center to give ground slowly, drawing the Persian army further and further into the trap. The Persian commander, sensing victory, committed more of his reserves to the main push, eager to break the Muslim line. He had no idea what was waiting for him. At the decisive moment, when the Persian army was fully committed and engaged, Khalid gave the signal. The 2 hidden cavalry regiments burst from behind the ridges and slammed into the Persian rear. At the same time, Khalid ordered his own infantry and cavalry to launch a furious counterattack on the front and flanks. The Persian army was suddenly hit from all 4 sides. They were completely surrounded. This maneuver, known as a double envelopment or pincer movement, was devastating. Panic and chaos erupted in the Persian ranks. Surrounded and unable to escape, their army was annihilated. The Battle of Walaja was a tactical triumph of the highest order, a perfect demonstration of Khalid's military genius. As Muslim armies struggled in Syria, Caliph Abu Bakr sent Khalid ibn al-Walid on a daring mission to cross the deadly Syrian desert and surprise the Byzantines. Khalid's men became living water tanks, enduring 6 days of hellish travel. Emerging behind enemy lines, their arrival stunned the Byzantines and changed the war's course. With Khalid ibn al-Walid in command, the Muslim armies faced the Byzantine force. The Byzantine Emperor Heraclius assembled an enormous army. They converged near the Yarmouk River. The battle raged for 6 days. Khalid's elite cavalry turned the tide. A dust storm aided Khalid's decisive assault. The Byzantine army collapsed into chaos. The Battle of Yarmouk was a decisive victory. Khalid ibn al-Walid was more than just a successful general who won battles. He was, honestly, a primary architect of the early Islamic Empire's expansion. After the Ridda Wars solidified Muslim control over the Arabian Peninsula, It was Khalid who spearheaded the next, crucial phase. He led the charge against the two regional superpowers, the Sasanian Persian and the Byzantine empires. His consecutive victories in Iraq and Syria were not random skirmishes, they were the foundational campaigns that transformed a regional Arabian power into a world-changing force. He was the cutting edge of the Caliphate's expansionist policy, the one sent to the most dangerous fronts to achieve what seemed impossible. His campaigns were instrumental in breaking the centuries-old stalemate of power in the Middle East. The Sasanian and Byzantine empires had long regarded Arabia as a peripheral zone, a source of mercenaries or a minor nuisance. Khalid shattered this perception completely. His swift and decisive conquest demonstrated that the new Islamic State was not only a spiritual force, but also a military power to be reckoned with. The fall of major cities like Damascus and the crushing defeat of imperial armies at battles like Yarmouk sent shockwaves through the ancient world. Khalid was not just conquering land, he was dismantling the old world order and laying the groundwork for a new one. The territories he conquered were not merely plundered and abandoned. Khalid played a key role in establishing the administration of these new lands. He was skilled in negotiating treaties with conquered populations, often offering them generous terms that protected their lives, property, and freedom of worship in exchange for their allegiance and the payment of a tax, the jizya. This pragmatic approach helped ensure the stability of the newly acquired regions, making the transition to Muslim rule smoother and, honestly, less resentful. He understood that long-term control was not just about winning the war, but also about winning the peace, a crucial aspect of sustainable imperial expansion. Ultimately, Khalid's leadership provided the critical momentum for the nascent empire. His campaigns created a vast, contiguous territory under Muslim control, stretching from the deserts of Iraq to the shores of the Mediterranean. This rapid expansion provided the Caliphate with immense resources, strategic depth, and a diverse population. It also fueled the confidence and belief of the Muslims, who saw these incredible victories as a sign of divine support for their cause. Khalid ibn al-Waleed was the field commander who translated the vision of the caliphs into tangible reality, carving out the borders of an empire that would shape history for centuries to come. Khalid's leadership was defined by leading from the front, never from a safe distance. He fought alongside his men, sharing their dangers and inspiring them with his bravery. His soldiers saw he'd never ask them to risk what he wouldn't, building fierce loyalty and trust. When Khalid charged, his men followed, because he was always right there with them. Khalid ibn al-Waleed's military genius was rooted in a mind that was both creative and deeply analytical. He was a master of psychological warfare, understanding that battles are won in the minds of the commanders and soldiers as much as on the field. He consistently used deception, surprise, and intimidation to demoralize his opponents before the main fighting even began. His nighttime maneuvers at the Battle of Mu'tah, which created the illusion of massive reinforcements, tricked a vastly superior Byzantine army into allowing his forces to withdraw safely. He knew how to manipulate his enemies' perceptions and exploit their fears, turning their own strengths, like their rigid discipline, into weaknesses. He was a revolutionary innovator in tactics, never relying on a single predictable strategy. While many armies of the era depended on static formations and brute force, Khalid's approach was all about speed, flexibility, and maneuver. He was one of the earliest pioneers of the pincer movement, or double envelopment, which he executed to perfection at the Battle of Walaja. This complex maneuver, which required precise timing and coordination, surrounded and annihilated a larger Persian army. He tailored his tactics to the specific terrain, the enemy he was facing, and the composition of his own forces, making him an unpredictable and terrifying opponent to face in battle. Perhaps his most audacious and famous feat of strategic thinking was his legendary march across the Syrian desert. Faced with the need to reinforce his beleaguered comrades in Syria quickly, he rejected all conventional routes. He chose a path considered impossible, a waterless wasteland that no army had ever crossed. This decision demonstrates his supreme confidence and his willingness to take calculated, high-stakes risks to achieve a decisive strategic advantage. The march itself was a logistical masterpiece, showcasing his meticulous planning and problem-solving skills, and its successful completion completely upended the Byzantine war effort in Syria, catching them entirely by surprise. Underpinning all of this was Khalid's profound understanding of logistics and intelligence. He knew that an army marches on its stomach and that knowledge of the enemy is paramount. Before any campaign, he would gather extensive information about the terrain, enemy strength, and their commanders' habits through a sophisticated network of scouts and spies. His planning for the desert march, including the use of camels as living water tanks, shows a logistical mind of the highest order. He was the complete general, a master strategist, a brilliant tactician, an astute psychologist, and a meticulous planner who left as little as possible to chance. The armies Khalid ibn al-Waleed commanded introduced a new and disruptive model of warfare to the ancient world. The forces of the Byzantine and Sasanian empires were built around heavy infantry and heavily armored cavalry, designed for set-piece battles on open plains. They were powerful but often slow and inflexible. Khalid's armies, in contrast, were built for speed and mobility. Composed primarily of lightly armored but highly skilled infantry and camel or horse-mounted cavalry, they could move faster, endure harsher conditions, and adapt more quickly to changing battlefield circumstances. This emphasis on mobility was a core tenet of his military doctrine. This new model was perfectly suited to the men Khalid led. The Arab warriors were hardened by a lifetime in the desert, accustomed to scarcity, and possessed incredible stamina. Khalid harnessed these natural strengths and combined them with iron discipline and an unshakable faith. He organized his forces into smaller, more flexible units that could operate independently or in concert, allowing for complex maneuvers like the flanking attacks and envelopments he favored. He also pioneered the use of a dedicated mobile reserve, a force he could deploy at critical moments to exploit a weakness or repel a threat, giving him tactical control over the flow of the entire battle. Khalid's strategies had a lasting influence on military thought, particularly within the Islamic world. His successful campaigns became a blueprint for future Muslim generals who studied and emulated his tactics for centuries. His emphasis on speed, surprise, detailed reconnaissance, and the use of mobile reserves became hallmarks of early Islamic military success. He demonstrated that a smaller, more agile, and highly motivated force could, with superior leadership and strategy, defeat much larger and more heavily equipped professional armies. He effectively wrote the first chapter in the Manual of a New Way of War that would carry Muslim armies to the borders of India and the shores of the Atlantic. The impact of this new model of warfare extended beyond the battlefield. The speed and decisiveness of Khalid's campaigns allowed the early caliphate to expand at a breathtaking pace. This rapid expansion prevented its powerful enemies from having time to regroup and launch effective counteroffensives. By keeping his opponents constantly off balance and reacting to his moves, Khalid seized and maintained the strategic initiative. His leadership and the new model of warfare he perfected were, therefore, a fundamental engine of the early Islamic State's growth, proving that revolutionary ideas, when combined with brilliant execution, could indeed change the world. In 634 AD, after the Battle of Yarmouk began, Caliph Abu Bakr passed away and was succeeded by Umar ibn al-Khattab. One of Umar's first acts was to dismiss Khalid ibn al-Waleed as commander, shocking the army. Umar feared the soldiers relied too much on Khalid, forgetting that victory comes from God. Khalid accepted the order humbly, serving loyally under his successor, proving his devotion was to faith, not fame. After his dismissal, Khalid ibn al-Waleed continued to serve in Syria, fighting bravely under Abu Ubaidah, his military genius still respected. He led charges, inspired troops, and faced danger with undiminished passion. Eventually recalled by Caliph Umar, Khalid retired in Homs, far from the battlefields he loved. On his deathbed he lamented not dying as a martyr, but his legacy as the sword of God endures. Khalid ibn al-Waleed's legacy echoes through history. Remembered as one of the greatest military commanders, his name stands with Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan. Revered as Saif Allah, the sword of God, he inspired unity and courage, and set new standards for leadership and humility. Though the sword of God is sheathed, Khalid's enduring legacy continues to inspire across generations. Khalid ibn al-Waleed stands as a towering monument to military greatness. He commanded armies in over 100 battles and never tasted defeat. But his journey was not just conquest, it was profound transformation. The sword of God was more than a title, it was his purpose. Khalid's strength was matched by humility, and his leadership inspired unwavering loyalty. His life was a story of challenge, change, and ultimate triumph. Khalid ibn al-Waleed's story is a living source of lessons for today. His mastery of speed, surprise, and maneuver on the battlefield, and his leadership by example forged unbreakable trust. He showed that true strength is tempered with humility, and that anyone can change and rise above their past. The legacy of Khalid inspires us to lead with conviction and purpose, echoing through history to this very day.